This is episode 26 of the ongoing AS and A-Level Java series, and in this episode we're going to be looking at classes and objects. Alright, so what we want to do is we want to first look at a little bit of theory, then we will jump right into the code. So as you might be aware Java is an object-oriented programming language. So this means that it follows the object-oriented programming paradigm to develop applications or to develop software. Then with that in mind, it's important to realize that everything in Java is associated with classes and objects. And you might agree with me that we've been creating classes, I think, throughout the series from the start right up until this point. We were making sure that whatever code that we write is inside of a class and also within the main method. For the most part, we were making sure that our code was within the main method, and we're also creating a few more methods of our own, but for the most part we're just using the main method. So everything in Java is associated with classes and objects, and along with its attributes and methods. So we'll be looking at attributes briefly when we jump into the text editor to write some code, and we've been looking at methods throughout the series. Take for instance the main method. We actually might have created methods that can add two values and so forth and so on. So having said that everything in Java is associated with classes and objects, we did look at objects in the previous tutorial, or in the previous episode, when we said that a class is a blueprint and an object is an instance of a class. So in real life, you can think of a car as an object, right? And the car is going to have attributes such as weight, color, and there's going to be methods such as drive, brake, and so forth and so on. So in this regard, we can think of a class as an object constructor, right, or a blueprint for creating objects. So let's actually go ahead and jump into VS Code right here. And what we're going to do is let's create a class called, I think in the previous example we used a class called fruit. So let's just create just zoom in a little bit. So let's create let's collapse the left panel there so that we have more space on the screen. So let's create a class called fruits, right? Or rather, maybe let me actually call it fruit so that it's just singular. Yeah. But what we're going to do in the fruit class is that we are going to first create an attribute, because we know that every fruit is going to have a name. So let's start by creating an attribute of type name for our fruit. So a name is a string, then we can then give it a name. So maybe let's make this one an apple. Then after creating the name attribute, we can then create the main method. So it is within the main method that we are actually going to instantiate or to create the fruit object, as it were. Maybe let me just add a few lines of a few comments here. Attribute will be inherited by the fruit object. Alright, so what we need to do next is we need to actually instantiate the object. So the syntax for instantiating an object is like so. So you start with the class name, which is fruit. Then after the class name, you want the name for the object. So you want to create an object called apple, and that is, we just call it apple object. Then I assign, or rather I call the new keyword, which is going to actually instantiate the particular object. So you can think of new as actually saying you're telling Java that you want to create a new object, as it were. Then you want to create new from the fruit constructor. I know we haven't touched on constructors, but this right here, this fruit with the parenthesis right there, is the constructor which actually creates the fruit object, or the object, as it were. Then we simply want to do one thing. We simply want to output the name for the fruit. So let me just do sysout. Then instead of passing a string, I want to actually output apple. Alright, so remember I said that the attribute will be automatically inherited by whatever object we inherit, because we are instantiating from the what? From the fruit class, as it were. So if we say object dot, you realize that we all have those methods available to us. Some of these, they come default by Java, as it were. But what we want to do ourselves is that we want to create, or rather we want to output the name for our fruit. So we'll go with name there, as it were. Then let me try and let me actually compile it from the command line instead of having to type run. So we have Java C, then fruit.java, that's the class we want to compile. It's done compiling. Then let's call the Java virtual machine and let's ask us to run the fruit.class. So you realize that we get apple down there printed down there in the console, as it were. Then also you can create an object. I think maybe we'll look at this maybe in the upcoming tutorials. So you don't necessarily have to instantiate an object within the same class, is it? You can actually instantiate an object from another class, as it were. So we'll be looking at that as we progress with the series. But I think that's just about it for this episode. I'll see you in the next one.